Welcome to Sausage on a Fork, a podcast dedicated to the UK's longest running children's drama programme, Grange Hill. My name's Neil, and in each episode I'll interview a former cast member about their life before, during and after their time on the programme. Okay, welcome to the next episode of Sausage on a Fork, and I'm absolutely delighted to say that I have been joined for this episode by none other than Simone Nylander, who played Janet Sinclair. Simone, welcome to Sausage on a Fork.
Welcome. Good morning. Good morning.
What we'll do, Simone, is we'll start this episode the way we start every episode, and if we go right back, and if you can just tell us how you got into acting.
So at the time, now I don't know if I was a real hectic child, but my mother pretty much wanted me to be occupied in like after school clubs. And she came across the infamous Anna Scher's theatrical school, which was based in Islington. And I kind of signed up for her classes, which I believe, if I can remember, it was every Tuesdays and Thursdays evening. So something like 6 o'clock to 7:30. And essentially, we just went through all the usual kind of warm-ups that actors do, and a lot of kind of made-up plays. And yeah, it was great. And every so often, we'll see a whole board of different auditions that were taking place. And not soon after I'd signed up, I got an audition for Grange Hill.
Right.
Which, at the time I was like, great. But I don't think I was really overly excited. It was like, okay, this is what I have to do. But yeah, so I didn't really kind of understand the whole magnitude of like how popular Grange Hill was at the time. And so the whole process was that my agent Anna, she was like, you have to be at the BBC White City, because that's where we initially were doing all the auditions and filming. It was at the BBC White City Centre. And yeah, I had to be at this place, and there were hundreds of kids, which was very overwhelming at the time. And they all seemed very theatrical. And, for me, it was very much like, I'm just this schoolgirl from North London. But yeah, I think I was 7 at the time, just turned 7.
Right.
So my mother was my chaperone. And yeah, we just had to go. It was a whole day of different little workshops, and we were told to make a story on the spot, which I hated, or tell a joke on the spot, which I was like, oh God, this is awful. But everybody seemed to be really into it. And I just remember these kids are so full on. So I think looking back, if I was the director, I'd be thinking, God, this schoolgirl really doesn't like to get involved in anything. So yeah, because I just remember the director said, so can you tell us a joke, Simone? I was like, no. Like very flat, not really participating or being like a typical 7-year-old. But yeah, so that was it really. And I think I had to maybe read a few lines from a script that they had, and then me doing the lines. So I was very good at being, you do something, and I just did it, and that was it really. So, and I think I got a call back. I'm not quite sure. But I do remember in the green room, they had some really cool cookies. And I think I was more excited about that.
Right. So just going back then to Anna Scher's, was there anyone at Anna Scher's with you who was in Grange Hill or anything like that?
Susan Tully. There was like Jake Wood, which I can't remember if Jake Wood actually did Grange Hill and then did EastEnders. I'm not too sure. And there was Palmer, Sid Owen, Lee MacDonald. The majority were. It was Anna Scher, Sylvia Youngs, Italia Conti, Barbara Speake. They were the main kind of stage schools. Even though we weren't a stage school, we were like more like an evening theatrical club. But they were the main ones that the actors were signed up or represented by.
Right. And so you just said, you didn't think at the time, you didn't realize what a big deal it was being in Grange Hill. Were you aware? Did you watch it?
I was aware of Grange Hill, but I wasn't allowed to. My parents were very strict, old school parent, and that was under no certain terms must their firstborn watch such a program. So it was like that. But I'm sure I sneakily watched a few episodes, and I thought I was being such a rebel, so rogue program like that. But yeah, so I was fully aware, but it was just like, oh, I've got an audition for Grange Hill. I don't remember being nervous or anything. I just remember being told you have to turn up at a certain time and you just got to follow instructions. And
Yeah.
that was it. So,
Right.
but
And
yeah.
and so had you had no sort of television work before then?
No.
Right. Right. Okay. So then what was it like? Because you joined Series 5, 1981. You would have been filming that. It was still like in its infancy at the time. What was it like joining the program? Because obviously you just said there you were like 7 or 8 years old.
Yeah, I
You
mean,
were a lot younger than.
I was so much younger, but then there was part of me which was I kind of liked the fact that I was with the older crowd. You
Right.
know,
Yeah.
I was with the producer and the sound boom guy and the technician and the wardrobe mistress. It was all very adult. I mean,
Yeah.
you think about a 7-year-old, and you've got the lighting and you've got the cameras and you've got makeup artists. You've got all these adults around you. So for
Uh-huh.
me, I kind of loved that aspect of it, not
Yeah.
necessarily being with any of the other actors because most of them annoyed me, but
Right.
I kind of liked being around adults because then it made me feel adult.
Uh-huh.
And it kind of suited my character, which was kind of very straight laced.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
so
You joined there, as I've just said there, Series 5, playing Janet Sinclair. Now, please take this in the right way, because obviously the focus of that year group was on 6 other characters when they started. So you had Samo, Jonah, and Roland, and you had Annette, Faye, and Belinda at the time. Were you sort of made aware that even though you were joining the cast, you weren't one of these main characters, so to speak?
no, not really. At
Right.
7, had I done loads of, filming and I was in the industry
Uh-huh.
well before then,
Yeah.
maybe I would have been aware, but it's not something that I would have been mindful
Right.
about.
Okay. Okay. No, I was just wondering there,
It's
like, so
interesting though.
the first time we really saw Janet was when she was describing her first week at Grange Hill, and I love it. I was watching it the other day in preparation for this, and it just sounds like most kids' first week at any high school, because everything was so big, and it was, there was all sorts of different corridors and different rooms, and it is a big thing, isn't it? And I just love that, because as you said there, Janet was very straight laced. What I liked about she was really clever, and she's possibly the nicest pupil that ever went to Grange Hill. She wants to do everything for everyone.
But equally, she also didn't have any filter
Yeah.
because whatever was in her mind, she would just come out with it. And I
Yeah.
suppose if she was in this day and age, it would be like, you can't say that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Come out and talk about someone's body image like that.
Yeah.
But it came from a right place,
Yeah.
and she really did care about Roland or Roland.
Yeah.
So yeah, so in that sense, what you were saying about starting the first day at school, it was a bit like that because you had the whole crew, you had the whole production, and you had all these new talent. So and nobody knew each other, and everyone's trying to find their place. So
Yeah.
all that kind of emotions were, it was real, it was quite raw. But essentially, I just kind of got on with it.
Yeah. Yeah. You just said something there, which obviously I need to ask you about, because in the Chessington Zoo episode, which I believe was the first episode that you filmed, we hear the words that become synonymous with Janet. For the first time, we hear it, and it's probably actually the only time we actually hear the sentence, "I'm trying to help you, Roland." Now, I know you will have been asked this a million times before. Why was it Roland and not Roland like everyone else?
I think when I was reading the script, it was kind of, you just had RO and then L hyphen A hyphen. And I was just thinking, so in my head, I'm thinking of it phonetically. I'm
Yeah.
supposed to say, well, either, I suppose an actor could take certain words in a certain way. But when I read it phonetically and said Roland. But in hindsight, I guess what the writer was trying to establish, that maybe I was trying to emphasize his name because I was trying to get my point across,
Right.
whatever that was.
Yeah.
I just said Roland, and I remember the director was like, "You've got to say it like that.
Right.
That's how I want you to say it. That's how you have to say it." And I was like, "Roland, just say it how you said it before, Simone. Fine." And it just stuck.
Yeah.
and it's still stuck. Amount of years later, there's that Roland bird. So yeah, so that's how it came about. I
And
read it phonetically
right.
as a 7-year-old child.
There we go. The question answered for us. So you said there, as well that Janet seemed to have no filter because Roland accused her then of teasing him, but she did genuinely just want to help him. Did she wants to look after him, didn't she?
Yeah, 100%. I just think in her head, she just couldn't fathom anyone being that size and then always constantly eating the wrong types of foods.
Mhm.
So she clearly was into eating healthy foods at the time.
Uh-huh.
But, him stuffing himself with, Pepsi or Fanta and salt and vinegar crisps, she just really couldn't get her head around it and the lack of exercise. So she's just like, well, if you cut those things off, then you won't be as fat because
Yeah.
you're only going to get fatter and fat. I mean, gosh, you think about the lines that could not be said now. Well, mind you, these days, so much more is worse,
Yeah.
to be honest with you. But yeah, it all came from a good place. And I know he construed it as, oh, you're just teasing me, leave me alone. And it's just like, well, I'm just trying to help you.
Yeah.
I mean, it was very black and white with her.
Yeah.
So yeah, funny little thing.
Like I say, I just thought she was always the nicest character, Grange Hill.
Now, I could tell you this now. If Janet St. Clair was in my class, like let's say in this day and age, I don't think I would be friends with her.
Right.
Really irritating. So yeah, I don't think that would happen.
Right. Okay. So then, was there anyone that you were particularly close to on the show?
Yeah, it would have been Erkan because
Right.
obviously I had most of my scenes with him.
Mhm.
And then I was really close to who was I close to? Yeah, I guess I was close to nearly all of them, I suppose.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I mean, we all used to play pranks on one another. I really fancied Lee Spark, who played Jonah.
Right.
I remember seeing him thinking, God, why can't I have scenes with him? Why do I have to have scenes with Erkan? Sorry, Erkan. But, I remember at the time thinking he was like the most beautiful boy I'd ever seen.
Right. Yeah. Okay. You've said you worked a lot with Aiken, but was there anyone that you really enjoyed working with in another way rather than just being friends with?
God, what was that? You probably will know. It was one of the teachers, glasses, dark hair, attractive looking. I can't remember her name. God,
Oh,
that's really
Lucinda Gain, Miss Mooney.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I loved working with her. I mean, and again, I had a few scenes with her,
Uh-huh.
but she was lovely. She was always very accommodating, and she always used to say that she was amazed how I knew all my lines,
Yeah.
and I always tried to be, again, try to be adult at the
Yeah.
time. When you're younger, you always want to be a lot older than you actually are. Yeah, she was really lovely, and I think I always wanted to, have a scene with like Gripper, like the
Right.
classic characters,
Yeah.
because they always had such like really interesting scenes. Because
Yeah.
my scenes were just very straight. I was either following the teacher with my satchel and my two bunches, but like you've got scenes where the boys went in the water in Chesington, or they were being chased by the Clair
Yeah.
or something. I always wanted to do something like that, but they were all really nice working with them.
Yeah. Brilliant. I mean, you did have a scene with Gripper, didn't you? There was one scene where,
I
when
cannot remember really.
well, yeah, when the racism storyline was heavy in Grange Hill, and there's one scene where he grabs hold of you, and
No,
his mate grabs hold of another girl who you're with, who I don't think his name, and they
seriously,
have a
I
go.
can't
But it's
remember. Oh my
literally,
God, I've got to look out for that. Have you got that clip?
I'll find it.
Can you
I'll
send
send it
it
to you.
through?
Yeah, yeah, definitely, definitely, we'll get that over to you.
Oh
Yeah.
gosh, that's so bad. I really don't
Well,
remember
like I
that.
say, I mean, it's about 30 seconds long, as I say. It's when it's all coming to a head with Gripper and the lads and stuff that when it happens. So you've just mentioned there about Lucinda Gain, who played Miss Mooney. What was generally the relationship between the kids and the adults like?
Yeah, I mean, look, we were all really professional. I mean, we all had our different kind of individual personalities, but
Yeah.
at the end of the day, we all respected the crew's time, the other actors' time, because it's always kind of at a tight schedule, and especially when you're filming on location, there's only a certain amount of times or hours rather, that a child could work because of
Mhm.
child licensing. So we were always very, very professional with one another. But equally always excited, like knowing, oh, what scene, because not all the time the scenes are done in
Yeah.
sequence. So we just respected everyone's time, and we just kind of, again, it was just very simple. We just got on with it. We had our lines, we had to learn our lines, we'd do our scenes together. We're probably stuffing ourselves because they used to do really amazing bacon and fats. But yeah, that was it.
Yeah.
Or
Brilliant.
sometimes we might have like kind of tutors who would travel with us if we've
Right.
missed them out of school as well.
Yeah. Because you've mentioned location there, and obviously your year group did quite a bit on a location, because obviously you mentioned Chessington, and
Yeah, Chessington, and I think we went to Yorkshire.
the Outward Bounds thing in Wales.
Yeah, and Wales. Yeah, we did quite a bit actually all over.
Yeah.
Um, but it was amazing. I mean, I think what fascinated me, I mean, going on different locations, literally like going on a school trip, right?
Yeah.
What fascinated me is like when, the classroom setups at the BBC Centre, and they weren't real. They're
Yeah.
like, if you had to have a scene where you're, banging the door and you're getting out of the classroom with your rucksack and you might see the walls moving either side. I always found the setup incredible. There were real desks.
Yeah.
There were real accessories, but the surrounding, how to make everything was fake. And
Yeah.
I found that fascinating as a child, because
Yeah.
obviously when you watch it on TV, it looks so real.
Uh-huh.
Um,
Okay, so move on into Series 6. I've just mentioned the Outward Bound, which we'll come to in a minute. Because in Series 6, Diane Cooney joined, played by Julianne Steele. Then Roland started picking on Diane Cooney. And there was a bit where Janet puts Roland in his place when he's doing it as well. Because
Didn't she always put Rowley in
but
his
she
place?
said to him, you know what it's like to get picked on, you shouldn't be doing it and stuff like that.
Good on
Um,
Janet for saying that. Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely.
And then we see another side to Janet. I love this bit because Zamo and Jonah are talking about a girl's time of the month. And it's apparent they don't really know what they're talking about. And you just see Janet laughing at them, which is a side you never really saw of Janet. And
I think there was some kind of underlying smugness that would come up so often, and it was very, very subtle. But if you were quite astute in looking at these things, you'll spot it. But there's always that element where she'll say something, and you'll see that realization of what she's really thinking
yeah.
deep inside, or she'll make some little looks. There was definitely another little side to her, which I wish that it was explored more.
Yeah.
To me.
Yeah, no, I do like that. Oh, you got to go to St Albans as well. Well, it was a day in the episode. I'm guessing it might have been a little bit longer than that.
Yeah.
And then in that series as well, we've mentioned a couple of times that Janet had no filter, but I think she was quite philosophical in some of the things that she says, with, are you eating because you're depressed, and then you'll become depressed because you're eating and stuff like
Look at
that.
her trying to be some kind of therapist back in the day. I mean, yeah, you're right. I mean, there were times, I think it depends on her mood and if she had done all her work on time, and then she had a clear head to really try and overanalyze
Yeah.
someone who really didn't care what was coming out of her mouth. Yeah, there were different facets to her, but ultimately, she was quite irritating though. She's just such an irritating character. And the thing is, I was so opposite
Right.
what she was like in real
Yeah.
life.
Right.
So yeah, it's
Yeah,
funny.
I mean, one of the things that she says is when Roland's walking out of school, and she says to him, and I love this: running away from your problems won't solve them; they'll still be there when you get back. And again,
She's
it's
wise head on her shoulder.
yeah, definitely, definitely. So we mentioned the Outward Bound trip. What was it like for you on filming on that one?
What, getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning? Which was like, I mean, I look back at it and I was really quite organized and disciplined. I mean, a child having to wake up at that early time of the morning.
Uh-huh.
But again, like I said, the schedule was really quite tight, and you had to respect the crews and production's time. So again, I was really good at following orders, instructions, and
Right.
the chaperones would be waiting for us, and then we'll get on a coach, or I'll be in a car and it will take us to wherever we needed to go. But again, it was that whole kind of excitement, as if you were going on a day out.
Right. Yeah.
So not only did you have to enjoy being in a lovely location, but you you had to do your work. We were working actors who just had to learn our lines. And I think my biggest thing back then is forgetting lines,
Right.
because it takes so much time. It's like cut, and then you've got to start again. So you're constantly learning lines the whole time, and then there could be changes in scenes. And I look back and I just don't know how I did it.
Right. And do you have any particular favourite episodes or storylines that you were involved with?
I think there was, and I really can't remember if it was broadcast, but I think you get to see Janet's home life.
Right.
And so Janet's mother came into play a lot further down the line. I kind of like that, because then you kind of see what her home life was like and her relationships with her family. Don't ask me what scene or year that was.
Right, okay.
You will probably know more than me. But yeah, I kind of like that, because it's just, it was all the time that Janet was either, not picking on Rowley, but she was on his case, or I was following a teacher and asking benign questions, or
right.
So I kind of like that side of things, when it was kind of away from the school setting, and it was like home life. It was just different.
Yeah. So again, moving on then. So series 7 is the series when Roland started changing a little bit, and Janet noticed there was a change in him in some way, with the fact that he was always eating. She goes on about him always eating fish and chips for his tea. His shirts weren't clean and stuff, and then she realised that there was some kind of neglect going on in Roland's life.
I think with Janet, because she was so aware of what Rowley was like, and then because she was very astute and focused on him, she could see the changes. So if he was coming into school very unkempt, that would strike a chord, thinking, in her therapist kind of mind, that doesn't seem right. What's going on? And she'd probably overanalyze it, and then she'll verbalize it. Her mind was always ticking. And again, I guess deep down that would really concern her a lot, because you can imagine, if you see that slow transition of someone changing in school, it's somewhat disturbing. And I think that would have been very prevalent with Janet.
Oh yeah, definitely. Also in that series was when Jeremy drowned in the swimming pool. Were you involved in that scene?
I don't think. I'm sure I've done a lot of swimming pool scenes, actually. I can't remember that one though.
Right.
Having said that. So yeah.
That was, I mean, that was a big thing for me as a viewer at the time. So I can't believe they've just drowned him there. Like, okay. And then we talked about the thing with Roland. Janet went to Roland's house, and found, the door was unlocked, and then the dad came in, played by Mike Savage, and told her that the mum had left, and Roland hadn't told anyone. And I think it's Roland's dad calls Janet a busybody, which
I can imagine that, and I suppose rightly so. But again, anything that she did was always came from a good place.
Yeah, but definitely. Yeah.
If you came from a family background like Rowley's, he would think, who is this girl who's just in my face?
Yeah.
Go away.
Yeah. And then in that series again, there was another location, because you had an orienteering weekend as well. That might have been when you mentioned Yorkshire before.
I remember going to Yorkshire. Do you remember what was that film? Was it the American Werewolf in?
Oh yeah, there was American Werewolf in London. Yeah,
there was American Werewolf in London, and there was American Werewolf. What was the first one? Was that the American Werewolf in London?
Yeah, that was the first one. Yeah.
But then there was that one. There was some scenes in Yorkshire, right?
Oh right.
So I remember thinking, I can't believe the things my mother would allow. So she would let me watch Grange Hill, but she'll not let me watch things like that. Or maybe I sneakily watched it.
Right.
I remember watching that, and I remember when the scripts will come through, and I was like, oh my God, we're going to be filming scenes in Yorkshire. I know I'm going to come across a real life werewolf. I mean, this was a real thing, I kid you not. And I remember thinking, I was quite anxious, thinking, how do I get out of this? Because I really don't want to travel to Yorkshire, because having seen that film, can you imagine, as a 8-9-year-old at the time, or whatever, however old I was, but it was a real thing. And I remember thinking, anywhere but Yorkshire. I don't want to think about Yorkshire Dales. So yeah, only because of that film.
Yeah, maybe you should have watched Emmerdale instead, and you would have had a much rosier picture of Yorkshire. And again, we saw the thing where it was genuine concern for Roland because him and Mr. Baxter hadn't come back, and then they found out Mr. Baxter had injured himself.
I was fascinated. Sorry to interject. I was actually fascinated with Mr. Baxter because I remember when he was in makeup, and I can't remember. I think his whole moustache and beard was not real.
Yeah.
And I was just like, oh my God, this is absolutely fascinating because it looks so real and it takes so long to put it on with the special glue. And I was just like, he doesn't have a moustache or beard. I think I remember sneaking into the makeup room, trying to see if I could put it on myself. Oh, trying to see if I could put it on myself and what I would look like with a moustache. I just found it fascinating.
That would have been amazing to see that away. But there's a bit in that scene where, because I mean, this would never happen now. They had 2 sixth form kids were left in charge of all the other kids because they were out looking. But then they find out that Mr. Baxter and Roland have been found, and Stewart makes a point of telling Janet separately that Roland's okay, and I really like that.
Lovely little moment.
Yeah. But then the end of that series is the school disco, and it's an iconic ending. I think it's one of those ones that you remember because of True playing and Claire and Stewart getting back together. And then there's all these people dancing with each other, and Janet's sitting at the side with Diane. And I just thought, surely that would have been the moment for Janet to go and ask Roland for a dance. Sure. I mean,
I think she wanted to, but just didn't have the courage to. God, it's so funny. She had the courage to say everything else.
He probably
a nice little cheeky dance.
To be fair, he probably would have told her where to go, wouldn't he? Roland,
completely.
to be honest.
But again, even if he had done, I don't think she really cared about rejection or anything. She was very much like, well, it's your loss. I think she was very much like that.
Yeah.
I think if I remember Wardrobe saying, oh, if you've got any kind of nice fancy disco clothes. Trying to go through my wardrobe with my mother. Do you think this would look nice on camera? It's just so bizarre. It's having that kind of conversation with your mother. But yeah.
Right. Okay. And then Series 8 was the year of the big merger of the 3 schools, and you had a load of new people coming from Brookdale and Rodney Bennett, which I always thought was bizarre. The fact that the Rodney Bennett kids, even though they lived in the same area, all spoke really posh. Right. I just thought it was really strange that they did that. Banksy's teasing Roland, and Janet sort of walks away from it. And one of the girls says, why aren't you sticking up for him? And someone else says she's probably had enough of not being appreciated. And she probably had by then as well.
I think at that point, she's just like, you know what? It's just never going to sink in. And he's never going to appreciate me. And, you're on your own. You're on your own, Roly. That's it.
Definitely. And there was another, I mentioned earlier, there was a racism bit with Gripper, but there was another bit with the 2 girls, Mandy and Sarah. Janet had seen them breaking a window, and one of the teachers questioned them on it, and they assumed that Janet snitched on them, basically. But they used some quite offensive terms. And even when you watch it now, and you just think that went out on a kids' TV program.
But you know what? It was the thing with Grange Hill and the way it was written. It was really kind of raw, and I think the reason why so many, well, you had all demographics of kids watching Grange Hill relate to it because it did reflect how school life was like. They didn't sugarcoat anything, and Phil Redmond was really good, as he did with Brookside, really tackling very kind of forefront issues, and that's why it was so relatable, and that's why it was so popular. You just think, how long Grange Hill went on for, and how it was very much a show which was on top of its game because it did tackle real life problems, and issues.
Yeah.
So why try and mask it?
Exactly. Yeah, definitely. And that year was the year of the French exchange, and we met. You've mentioned it before, but we met Janet's mum for a scene in that one. And this bit was really strange to me. Janet was given the wrong pupil, which was at first, but then it was all sorted out. And it just seemed like a really strange thing to put in because it didn't affect, for what we saw, it didn't really affect anything that had gone on. But then in that, the girl that she ended up with was much more mature than Janet, and there was a scene with a party, and Janet was really worried that they were going to be getting home late because this girl wants to stay out late. But then a young French lad puts his arm around Janet, and it's all forgotten about.
You know what? It's so funny, and I can't remember the talent's name, but I remember thinking, oh God, that's a little bit risky, you know, arm being put around me as an actor. But yeah, I do remember that.
Yeah, I think the character's name was Patrice. I think.
Oh, maybe.
Um,
God, I really, maybe I should revisit. I should
and
revisit
then
this.
and then Roland was obviously infatuated with Fabienne at the
Yeah.
time and was speaking French all the time. And Janet actually told him off for speaking French all the time as well, even though he was happy. She wants him to be happy. like,
I know. Like
but
double standards, double
yeah.
standards.
And then we also found out that Janet had an aptitude for art as well. And there's one scene where she gives Roland the birthday card that she'd made herself. And while she's giving him the birthday card, the deaf kid who she was supposed to be looking after got hit by a car. And she,
Just
and she felt so
didn't
guilty
make it up.
about it. The thing about the French exchange was it seemed to go on
Hang
for
on.
ages, didn't it? It was just like it was nearly all the whole series, and I just thought, but
Oh
these
God.
kids have been away from their home for months.
No. I
Janet,
think with anything with kids, you know, if they're, experiencing, different things at any given time, then, what would seem quite long, it doesn't seem long. It's
yeah,
like,
yeah. And then Janet went off Patrice sort of towards the end, and he was talking about writing to her, and she was like, "No, it's okay, don't worry, it's fine."
I mean, the cheek of it.
Uh,
Yeah, because pen pal, it was quite popular.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, it was. And then Janet was also the one again. Roland Centra here that she worked out. Roland had gone to Dover or had stowed away to France and ended up going to Dover with Roland's dad to meet him. We don't actually see that. She just talks about that. And then after that series was the Christmas special, one of the two Christmas specials that Grange Hill did. And Roland, it becomes apparent, is going to be on his own for Christmas Day. And so Janet's there to the rescue.
Of course, of course.
Just without speaking to any of her family, inviting someone round.
Yeah, that was it. It was a done deal. I think she probably always wanted him around for Christmas, and she seized the opportunity.
Yeah. And so then that sort of carried on a little bit into series 9 when she found out Roland was living on his own a lot because his dad become a long distance lorry driver. And he was quite often he'd be asking Janet to help her out, like with alterations and on their clothes and things. But there's a scene where Roland is trying to tell Janet something about Zamo. Either he knows, he's found out about Zamo and his drugs and stuff. But at the same time, Janet's only looking at Roland and trying to figure out what's going on with him, and she's worried about him being on his own and focusing on him. And in the end, Roland he loses his rag with it and walks
Yeah,
off.
I think they just had, I always used to think that maybe Roland kind of deep down appreciated that,
Uh-huh.
Janet was always there, but equally always found her quite irritating.
Yeah.
But, again, like I said, everything that Janet did always came from a good place, and she
Yeah.
didn't mean any harm, and she didn't want to come across irritating. Actually, I don't even think it came into her head. Even if she came across irritating, I don't think she really cared,
No.
because her main focus was that she just wanted her mate to be okay.
Do you do you
Um,
do you think there was ever any romantic intentions from Janet?
I think she would have looked at him more like a brother.
Yeah. That's what I genuinely have always
I
thought that.
just don't think, because if you really think about it, if Janet was older, she wouldn't be seen with someone so big.
Uh-huh.
She would
Yeah.
want to be someone really healthy,
Yeah.
conscious.
Yeah.
So I don't think she would have ever really looked at him in that way, or it would have even come across. She just wanted to make sure that he was okay.
Yeah.
I don't think there was any romantic element at all. I don't remember getting that kind of idea that
Uh-huh.
there could be some kind of romantic involvement at all.
Right. Yeah. No, I was
Although I know a lot of people be like, oh, it would be really good if those two got together, and that whole journey of their back and forth relationship, and yeah,
yeah,
maybe it would have been. Who knows?
yeah. But I mean, I've always said what you said there. She just wanted to look out
Yeah,
for him, didn't she? She was
yeah.
just a nice person. Okay, so then the very end of that series was the fun run, and again, rather than take part in the fun run, she was helping Roland with the refreshments.
Yeah,
Would that
that
have
would
been
be
would
right.
that have been your choice not to have taken part in the
No,
fun?
I was very sporty,
Right.
loved sports, so
Uh-huh.
I would have definitely been involved.
Right.
No two
Okay.
ways about it.
Okay. So then, obviously, around that time was Just Say No, which was, everyone knows it was a massive, massive thing that went on. And, you obviously you sang on the record and you're in on the video quite a bit doing the singing.
I remember that. That was so. I mean, it was very daunting for me. Anybody who knows me, my singing voice is so offensive. It really has no business being broadcast anywhere. But like I said, there were kids who came from a stage school background, and so singing and dancing. I danced a lot, but singing, no. And so
Right.
they were very confident singers, and I remember they were like saying, "Well, you got to sing a few, verses with Roland." And I was like, "Yeah, of course I'm going to be, lumbered with Erkan again." So I remember, oh gosh, I remember the excitement of going to Abbey Studios. I think it was at Abbey Studios.
Yeah, I believe
That's
it was.
really
Yeah.
cool. Yeah, exactly. That was brilliant because it's Abbey Studios, okay? But putting the headphones on and pretending to sing, it was just like all so cheesy. I remember feeling so ridiculously uncomfortable.
Right.
But I got on with it. I was ever
Yeah.
so professional, but I do remember thinking, oh gosh, I can't believe I'm in this situation. It wasn't a bad tune, actually.
Yeah. No, were you involved in any of the other songs on the album they released?
I doubt it.
Right. Okay.
I doubt it, and probably a good thing.
Okay. Now, obviously, that led to some of the cast going to the USA and visiting Nancy Reagan at the White House. And I know that there was a little bit of animosity from some members who were picked, and the members that of the cast who weren't picked to go. Were you aware of any of that going on at the
And
time?
also, I think initially I was supposed to go, but
All
I
right.
believe it was to do with the amount of time I had off from school.
Uh-huh.
Because, like I said, with regards to child licensing, there's only a certain amount of hours that you can do,
Right.
and that whole travel thing. So, and I think because I was so young, traveling to the States,
Uh-huh.
but it. I think I was just too young to really care about who
Right.
was picked for this, who was picked for that. I just,
Yeah.
you know.
Okay. Okay. So then, Series 10, 1987, and your year group has gone to sixth form, but Janet wasn't with them. Whose idea was that for you not to be in any?
I can't remember. The thing is, we always had our contracts renewed.
Right.
I think it was every year. But I remember I got to the point where I just didn't want to. Didn't want to film anymore. I didn't want to
Right.
be in it. So I wonder if that was the case. Why I wasn't in the sixth form.
Uh-huh.
I can't remember. I really, honestly, it was so long ago. But I think it was that element that I was quite happy not to renew my contract.
Uh-huh.
Chill.
So what did you do?
So after Grange Hill, I continued. I just wanted to be a normal child.
Right.
A normal child that I can go to the cinema and hang outside McDonald's and not be harassed by
I
the
mean,
general public.
what was the public reaction like?
I mean, yeah, look, to be honest with you, because my character was deemed as very, very sweet,
Uh-huh.
I had a lot of fan letters of kids writing to me saying, oh, can you come to it's really quite sad actually. Can you come to my school because I'm being picked on, and maybe you can talk to them and sort them out. And so
Right.
I had more people wanting to be my friend and me having to step in and
Yeah.
help them out if they're being teased and bullied at the time. But you can imagine, like I said, because Grange Hill was so big and everybody knew Grange Hill, everybody knew the theme tune, everybody knew the characters. I couldn't just go to Woolworths and get remember those 1p pick and mix.
Yeah.
I'm showing my age now, but you couldn't just do normal things without literally getting bombarded by the public, and you just think, God, because you can get like grown adults just surrounding you, and sometimes you just want to be left alone.
Oh, yeah.
But having said that, I'm so grateful it's not in this day and age. And, the whole thing with like mobile phones and, it was all very, nothing was kind of recorded and, sold to TikTok or something. But yeah, I think I just wanted to live a very normal life.
So did you then step away completely from acting?
I pretty much knew that. No, I didn't step away from acting.
Right.
I was, really very much into my art, and I went to a theatrical school where I did drama predominantly, and obviously all the academic stuff as well. And I wanted to learn about fencing and, backstage production stuff. So I was really interested in behind the scenes as opposed to being in front of the camera. So I did do all of that stuff, and I did go to drama college because I wanted to learn about method acting, but not necessarily to be in front of the camera. It's just another skill that I wanted to add to my bow. But yeah, it was definitely behind the scenes which interested me the most.
Right. Brilliant. And when you left that school then, did you then go straight
when I left to school, I think I did my A-levels, went to uni, and then did drama, and then I kind of worked for a production company for a bit, which was really, really good, doing lots of commercials. Then I kind of went into the music side of things and worked for Simon Fuller for nearly 10 years, which was great.
Yeah.
And that opened my eyes to the music side of things and how that works. And then I think I remember I was doing a commercial as a producer, and there was a voiceover element, and that's how I got into doing what I'm doing now, which is voiceover, running a voiceover agency. I've kind of been doing that for the past, nearly 20 years now.
Wow.
Believe it. But voiceover.
So what can you tell us a bit then about your company and stuff then?
Yeah, so I had a wise idea that, pandemic hit, why not just start an agency? I'd previously worked for a very big entertainment agency, working on the voiceover side. They closed the division down, and then I had left that company, and then I decided, you know what, I'm going to team up with my business partner and set up a voiceover agency. Brilliant. So actually, at the time, dare I say, when the pandemic came, it was just, it just kind of made sense for me to concentrate on the kind of talent that I wanted on the roster. And it was kind of a smooth transition because this is what I've been doing anyway, except I call the shots and I know exactly who I want on my books.
Yeah.
So that's what I've been doing for the past few years, and it's great. Love it.
Yeah, brilliant. So that's SN Voices for anyone that's
listening. Voices, yeah, exactly.
Anyone that's listening, anyone needs any voiceover work, get in touch.
Yeah, exactly. Get in touch. Get in touch. I'm always, looking at the roster and seeing what voices that I need to have. But yeah.
Brilliant. So, are you still in touch with anyone from the cast?
On and off.
Right.
We would message each other, but I kind of met up with Lee McDonald and Todd Carty and Susan Tully and Erkan Mustafa and Phil Redmond recently, when we did our BBC reunion, which was great to physically see everyone. But every so often, you know what it's like with adult life, gets in the way. I'm the worst. Everybody will know I'm so bad at keeping in touch. I'm useless. But every so often we would message each other.
Brilliant. Okay, coming to the end, Simone, and I've just got a few final questions. They're the same questions I ask at the end of every episode. Recently, there's been talk of a Grange Hill movie in the works. If you were asked, would we see a return of Janet St. Clair?
Gosh, I don't know. I mean, it really does depend, and it sounds so bad when I say that. It depends on my schedule. It depends on my schedule if I can fit that in. I don't know. There's so many different my thing is that the talent that I look after, and that's where my focus is.
Yeah.
But with that being said, if I thought that really worked and Phil is really good at incorporating characters really, really well, then maybe. But I mean, I think they've cast everyone now.
Oh, right. It's okay. You know more than me then.
I don't know. Who knows? I'm not saying that with such certainty. So me on that. But yeah, maybe.
Right. Oh, I think it'd be great just to see how
maybe there'll be enough interest.
Maybe.
With Rowley, I kind of look at him in a different light.
Okay. Other than Janet St. Clair, who is your favourite character on Grange Hill?
Oh gosh. I liked Zamo's character, and I really liked Faye's character as well.
And if you couldn't have played Janet, which other character would you like to have played?
Oh, definitely one of the very naughty ones.
Right.
Because they're always so interesting to play. They always had interesting, scenes. So he was really a really naughty one. One that would answer back to the teachers and make a scene in the classroom. It would be a character like that.
Right, someone like Imelda or Danny Kendall or someone like that. Yeah,
I mean, that would have been great. Absolutely superb. Yeah.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay then. So the final question, Simone, is why do you think there's still such affection for Grange Hill?
Do you know something? I just think, like I said, it was something that was so relatable to all kinds of demographics of kids at the time, that they could relate, or they could see an element of someone's character in them, or a situation that they may have experienced. I went through a phase when I just didn't want to know anything about Grange Hill. As you can see, there's very, very few interviews I've done.
Yeah.
And I just, because it was just something I'd done in my past, and but I've now come to the realization, actually, you know what? It did touch so many people in so many different ways. And I got to be part of something so iconic, and I should be appreciative of that. And so I've kind of come full circle and realized, actually, you know what? I shouldn't, be embarrassed or awkward about something like that. It's something that was part of my life. And people still remember it. People still recognize my voice. I just don't get it, but they still remember it. And so it is what it is. You have to embrace it.
Yeah, I mean, do you find it strange that people do remember you?
Yeah, because my life has changed so much, and I was a little girl, and I'm an adult now. Well, I like to think I'm an adult. But yeah, it's very, very. I remember actually, there was a producer who called the agency, and we were just talking about a brief for some commercial that he was doing, and he was interested in some of my talent, and he goes, "Can I just stop you there?" He goes, "Just don't. I know this might sound really strange, but you really sound like that bird from Grange Hill." And I was like, "Oh my word, I can't. Has my voice not changed? I don't know whether if that's a good thing or a really sad thing." But yeah, and that wasn't that long ago.
No. Oh, brilliant. Well, Simone, thank you so much for coming on. It really has been lovely talking to you. It's been great listening to your experiences. And for anyone who's listening, I'll speak to you next time. Thank you. Bye-bye.